Hey everybody, it's time for another Block Party debrief where we interview various designers from the Seattle Design Festival Block Party. I'm Trevor Dykstra from the Seattle Design Festival, here with my co-coordinators, Christine Vu, Tyler, and this week we're going to be talking to some folks from CallisonRTKL. We're going to bring them on right now and just get going. We have Eduardo, Rodrigo, and Nomi. Hello, everybody.
Guys.
Hello.
Yeah. So we figured we'd just start with what you all did last year, and maybe I don't know if one of you wants to take away just sort of describing what your project is. We actually have your early renderings as well. If you want to look at that.
No.
I don't know how you want to start. We
No,
can
of
start
course.
with the cool photo to start with, maybe.
Sure.
Let's see if we can do like that. Maybe is the best way.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having us. We're happy to be here and share the experience, which we haven't gotten to do much in the last couple of years. So it's we like the format and having that chance. Yeah, you're seeing the last what we ended up doing at the end, but as you can tell probably from the preview rendering, we changed the design quite a bit. And I think one of the main things that really frames our process is that flexibility of constantly going to the drafting board. But if we go back to the very, very early beginning of the process, I think what we've been centering the last couple of years is trying to know who is going to be at the festival, who is a real user, and who should we be targeting for. And I think at the beginning, we were thinking, well, what is something that kids want? And immediately, I think everyone came back to the conclusion that it's just color, and they just want us something that is approachable, and then they come by and maybe it's big, so it catches their attention. It's something that they're not used to. And with that in mind, the last couple of years, we have evolved what what are kids expecting, but also how to make adults also be part of that process. So I want to give Nomi and Eduardo a chance to kind of continue on that too.
Yeah, like Rodrigo said, like it's been a process of us participating in this festival and constantly seeing the result and our focus more aligned towards the target audience, who is the city of Seattle and the families who are going to be exploring the festival at that moment. So we've with every installation we've done, we come closer to that, like family and uh, vibrancy, like trying to a little get away from what architects normally pull towards, which is, we tend to go for real and natural and simple. When we are in this festival trying to be more magnetic, more vibrant, trying to induce like awe from the user. That's what I would say, definitely.
Well, I think we all have a lot of fun with the process. And starting right off, I mean, this year, especially this year, based off of some of the progress and the installation that we did last year, which is right there, which had a really good feedback. Everybody really liked that. We wanted to go kind of bigger, but we also had a lot of excitement in the office, which allowed us to kind of make a bigger team and get more ideas involved, which has a lot of really good advantages, but also, ends up being a struggle on how you integrate all these great ideas that we have into one project and make it a clear voice and a really strong, design. And, what we ended up with, I think to Rodrigo and Eduardo's point, really engaged the community. And, through that process that we had in our office, and with our strong team, was able to really produce something that, I mean, there were some kids who couldn't walk away. And at one point I thought it might come down based on the quantity of adults jumping around on it. So it was really fun overall. Yeah, a really great great project.
And of course, one thing that we started doing recently that other companies have done, but we always shied away from it, was partnering with a GC. In this year, it was Apture, which was incredible, except for the fact that we had to travel about an hour to Puyallup to go and
wow.
this thing.
Yeah.
But it really escalates things, and it's a really, really great idea, especially in the concept this year of connections, connecting partners and helping the community on that process. So that allows us to scale our budget, allows us to capabilities as well. It puts certain restrictions in terms of, okay, what can we do or what we should do that Apture can really tap into. We're not going to do a bunch of electronics for them to not be able to put a finger on it. We're going to do something it really merges, because we knew that we needed the tech aspect and we needed that kind of space environment that only through them we would be able to build in that consistency. I mean, we did give them like 300 and something pieces of many different sizes. So you learn through that process what can work and maybe what we need to tweak in the future, but making them part of that process as well from the beginning. And every single meeting for them to have their input of what is possible, what is not, is also part of everything that we do, having scheduled meetings every week with everyone that wanted to join from our office, but also with Apture, us presenting any kind of design ideas, Apture sharing their input. Most of the times at the beginning, they're just happy with what we're doing, see where it's going to go. And eventually we start to nail down what it should be. That's why the rendering is also super different from where the application with you guys to what we have at the end, because it continues to evolve even 3 or 4 weeks before the event.
And we also want to keep a little mystery.
Yeah. Well, and this evolved into something. I mean, initially there's all this look and, okay, well, there's an idea there. And then, okay, well, our concerns are, can it fall over? Is it accessible? And it answers all those things in the end here. It is accessible. It was probably one of the few that was accessible in a real way. Interacts in a way that doesn't require a lot of button pressing or anything like that. Worked out great and colorful, which we've talked about missing at the festival. So tech wise, I wanted to ask about that. I think so. My group did one that was similar. I think that year was that last year? No, the year before. With sound, and had thought about doing it in the same way you did with I think is that a Leap Motion or is it a Kinect?
That's a Z Stereo Labs camera.
Yeah.
It's a stereographic.
Yeah, stereographic. Okay.
Z,
yeah, but basically using a camera to capture the locations. But I wondered if you wanted to talk about the actual technical aspects of how we should introduce. I mean, the project. I don't know if we necessarily described it to the audience. That it's called Beat Roulette. Maybe you want to describe the interaction or the impetus for that before we get into all the bits and pieces.
Sure.
Like how do you use the installation?
So, well, maybe we should speak a little bit about how we came up with this, which is
there you go. Yeah.
The very, very first meeting, what we did was to ask everyone, basically the whole office, hey guys, what is connection for you? And one of the common themes between the different teams that we formed was about creating something together. So, okay, what can we do that engage people in trying to create something, but at the same time, because the festival is in like this super bright environment, we cannot do anything with light unless we cover the whole thing. We want to keep it open and attractive for everyone. So that's how it came up with sound. Let's annoy the whole festival with this sound machine. And we came up with, I don't know how many different iterations of how to produce sound. Nomi created these prototypes of dismantling a whole piano and putting it into different pieces and see how that could work. And this technology of using the cameras, we've been experimenting with it a little bit on the office for some digital displays. So we thought maybe there's a way to create some imaginary shapes that people can come and play and such. And it create a whole different type of challenges in terms of what type of music, how do you blend it, where does one instrument or one sound end, are the instruments, do they form a song? And I don't know, I would like Eduardo and Nomi talk more about that, because they spend a lot of time just trying to see how or hear what this thing should look like or sound like?
I feel part of the journey to nail down what it will become, like we already have decided we wanted to be interactive, we wanted to involve sound. So it was the interaction part and how the user will experience it that really started shaping things. Uh, with the testing Nomi did, we were trying to rule out if we were going to pull a string or we were going to trigger something physically. But quickly it came to us that the Kinects or the cameras would replace that, like button aspect of it.
Hmm.
And then having this like configuration where the space is telling you the reaction of it, well, it shaped the whole thing around it, right? It then became this kind of dance floor rather than wall exhibition, right? So it definitely affected it, and I think it made it better every step.
Definitely. And once we kind of figured out that, there were no buttons, and it was kind of a spatial environment that really changed the exercise. Part of it was about how do you create a space in which you make music, almost like game design or,
Hmm.
user experience. And we went through a lot of prototypes, and uh, right up until the end. And a lot of it came down to some technical coordination on, avoiding um, cacophony, and how do
Hmm.
you create sounds that work well with each other, um, and how do you work with the layout of this environment and communicate, graphically, an imaginary object that doesn't really exist, that you can't see, you can't, feel or touch, but
Hmm.
is going to give you some kind of feedback. So I mean, we were, right up to the last week, we had a full mock-up of kind of the camera with, large scale printed graphics, and we're swapping out samples and different kind of, almost music packs, and playing with styles and all of that. And it just it ended up turning out, I think better than we thought it would at that point.
It was very interesting because the whole set of instruments was configured in a way that if you play this one and this other one and this other one, it's gonna sound okay, and then maybe you start forming a song. And kids destroyed that whole idea. They just did
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
they came into the
yeah.
installation and run in circles. But that actually made it. They created their own environment with it, their own experience, and that is what captivated the attention of other people that came by, which was really interesting.
Hmm.
It was not necessarily harmony what was expected, like it was definitely like the kids really enjoyed the big loud sounds and stomping into the platform. It was really really refreshing to watch, definitely.
Yeah, it's all very one to one, like action, reaction stuff with the kids. Yeah.
I'm
Well,
curious, was there something that you kind of alluded to this and touched on a little bit, but were there lessons that you learned through this process? Were there some challenges that you faced that you had to kind of overcome and come up with some unique design solutions as part of this process?
I would say like the 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 thing was more about to make decisions and to put them forward than the actual solution difficulty, like at the end of the day, we have a mental picture of something that we were working hard towards, and sometimes we needed to remind ourselves that the user would enjoy this or that this other way, um, I feel that's the biggest lesson learned, because I think like we've probably sketched thousands of options that would have worked, and we've probably done so much testing so many of these these variations, and definitely looking back, like yeah, a lot of them would have worked just fine.
Yeah.
That just speaks to our passion, I think, with the team, and with the large team in our office. We're all designers. We all have lots of interesting viewpoints and a lot of feedback, and so that's one thing that we definitely do over and over is iterate. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the most important things about the festival. Like we touched about what we found very valuable, which is the target, but like the internal process, it is a journey, right? It is
Mhm.
a different thing that what we face every day. It's volunteer work internally. We work with different people at different timelines, at different schedules, and everyone wants to like help, and everyone wants to portray something and come up with something. So yeah, that is the thing that I feel makes us come back every year, is that it's very community building, and it helps us do something different. It helps us know how to work with different designers. Normally, like, we don't have that much competition in one project, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a structure on a team, and that's it. But in this, that it's a little bit on the side. Everyone can volunteer, and everyone can share their ideas. So yeah, that I feel that's a very important part of success, is how we work internally.
Yeah, I
For like a first time participant, do you think that there's any advice that you could give them in terms of like how to bring this to the site or with the installation process, or how difficult or easy that might be?
I well, we've had different experiences depending on whether you have a GC or not. But if you don't have a somebody who can be the person in charge of transporting or whatnot, modularity is the best way to go. And that doesn't mean that you're restricting yourself, just a way that you can still build a big installation, but foldable, or perhaps on different trips, just two or three, that would be good. That has been our salvation for that aspect of the festival for years. And I think another thing, more on the, not so much on the how to do things, but how to start things. Something very, very common, because everyone's going to be hands on this. Everything that you sketch, you're going to have to cut or saw or something. Is we try to start big, and then bring the scale back, and you always have to leverage that. But it helps us much more than whenever we always make the mistake of starting already with the end in mind, and trying to come up with a solution that is going to be buildable. But it limits us so much, because it's not trying to make us think outside of the box, or try to go on to a store or Home Depot and find that thing that is going to make it work, because we try to use the tools that we already know. So just start big, and then as the day comes by, that you have to build it in your schedule, that's when you start to nail down things and change the design a bit.
Yeah, I mean, this one solves a lot of those issues. I mean, I don't know if people will notice as much of like all the subtle ways that like, yes, you've got modular pieces around the outside, like that makes it easier to build, easier to disassemble, get large space. Having tried to do, or run through this process on one, and we went the non-tech route because we decided, okay, technology can get tricky, but you got to have that camera up high, which is its own design element. And like, how do you design? And like, so again, you've got this sort of swooping thing to capture that. People have got to stay within the field of vision of the camera, so you have a wall, but not a wall. All those things are really subtle ways of solving all those design challenges that I think folks look at and just like, oh yeah, well, they did a thing. And it's like, I bet you a lot of those things were driven by sort of the process, or
The
the
truck size, or
aspects, yes, of how it was done, as much as just somebody sitting down and like sketching, like, this is my idea. um
yeah, I would
yeah.
say definitely starting with some managing expectations, and like, put your priorities there. Like, if you already know that shipping is going to be an aspect, like, uh, try to calculate the volume, try to see if it's going to fit in one truck, two trucks, like, we started, like, as Rodrigo said, big. We had like intention to make it able to be dismantled and reassembled. We wanted to be had a sustainable disposability, and so we think of all these things at the start of the project, and then we see if we can really pull it through, right? At this particular one, if we dismantle it and reassemble it, it would suffer, and it wouldn't have been the same, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to, like, scratch that one. But yeah, thinking, as you say, a lot of these aspects shape, into the installation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
The Well, I was
ahead.
going to ask. So one thing about this that's unique to some of the others. Again, like when people approach me and say, "Well, what is advice to like do for this event?" The one thing I always push, and I push my own design team to like not do, is keep things very manual. Avoid a lot of hyper technical things, because inevitably we have somebody who's a team out there getting ready, and they're sitting there at the laptop for 7 hours as like inevitably the like bespoke software they wrote broke. Yet in your case, as far as I know, I mean, maybe you can tell me it didn't happen that way, but it seems like it went through pretty rock solid. I wonder how much testing you did in advance or whatever to make sure, I mean, or did you just get lucky?
I think I made it.
Structurally, there was a lot of like testing on the GC side.
Yes.
Of course, we were in communication and as they were building it, and we reacted accordingly. From the beginning, we knew there was there had to be some lateral bracing.
Mhm.
We saw it with some wiring, and that gave the stability that needed to happen, right? And on the tech side, Rodrigo planned this to be very, like, flexible, and so we can have ability to react to whatever happened. Like
So you had sort of an out if one
correct.
digital idea
Yeah.
didn't work. Yeah.
We had the build on site. Well, I think this photo doesn't show us there, but we had the build in the laptop. We were switching songs when they were not working. We tried to remove that super loud sound, but kids loved it, so we weren't able to do it. But yeah, 7 hours before the first day, I think we didn't have the solution completely planned out. It was just, and I mean, 7 hours as in 2 a.m. the night before. So
Yeah.
it was, but it's fun. It's part of the fun. That's what we
Yeah.
live for in terms of making the festival in a way, trying to put ourselves as little artists in some way that we get to do each year, because I don't think any of us do any other thing of that way. But we did test a lot with, as Nomi mentioned, with projection mapping on the floor to see how this shape should be. At the beginning was very prescriptive of this is step 1, and then they're going to jump to step 2, and then step 3. And at some point we were like, no, let's allow people to do what they want to do.
That's a real good piece of advice for any project at this event is, make it, fluid and simple, because it's not going to be used in a prescriptive way,
And can't underestimate the testing it out and have it live, and bring other people who aren't you in and watch them interact with it. I think that drove a lot of our decision making on the tech side, is just bringing people who had little knowledge of the project, say, hey, come up here and check this out, have them and just see how they naturally react and interact with the installation, and let that help inform what we do. The other side of that is you always have something kind of, it's work in progress, but you're not afraid to show it and share it. In your office, you're always kind of, you put it out there. You have to, that's part of that iterative process, is because, the worst thing is you wait till the last minute and the demo doesn't work.
Yes.
Because you haven't run the demo. So you always got to run it.
Yes.
Seems like, being flexible, even all the way up until the end, might pay dividends. And it seems like your project was rather unique, that you built a full scale mock-up, right? And was that to test the technical aspects of it, or was that to just vet the sort of design and constructability of the entire thing?
Both, I think. Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, well, like I think especially on the tech side, like the full size mock-up was the only option. Uh, but in this case, was like very easily put there. Like we use some projections into the floor and the actual cameras, right? So we were having the same pattern that you see right there. We had it in a corner of our office, and we were right in the middle testing it. And when I say testing it, I mean dancing in front of people and just
Asking
moving.
people to dance on it.
Yeah, and it was a full on testing there.
Yeah, we define things like how big these blobs need to be, or what is the accuracy of the camera, because we realize it's not super understanding if your feet is touching the ground for a camera that is in the air is impossible. So there's a threshold, and then what happens when you touch a different one, and those type of things. At the end, they kind of got together miraculously, but it was definitely, there were some hiccups that maybe only we can notice, or think that people that were really paying attention to. But as Eduardo mentioned earlier, it doesn't take a lot for people to experience the novelty of it, especially since they haven't been working on it for the past 6 months.
Yeah, how did you handle the obscure folks in front, in the foreground, obscuring the background, in terms of picking that up? Did that turn into an issue, or is it angled just enough where you can always pick the floor?
No, we ignore. Well, the camera allows, the motion tracking allows some predictability of the movement of people. So the angle that we picked was on the highest point of the structure, and it allowed, for the most part, to capture either their torso or their feet, so the camera could detect or predict the other part and where they were. Funny thing is that the camera is so powerful, it was actually able to capture people that were much well beyond the structure.
Oh, wow.
So
wide angle.
that is an very interesting footage of just people around the silhouettes around the part that is a 3D representation of their skeleton figures. But yeah, it was a little bit of a hassle at the beginning, and that changed a lot of the structure. We were supposed to do this very vertical planks, and we realized we needed to open that angle in order to allow for the camera angle. So that's how it ended up like this.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost. Oh, well, you mentioned footage. Did you record any of that? Like, that goes into sort of collateral, whether folks are documenting their own stuff or not,
We do have footage of the.
Here's
of
that
the
original
sticks.
idea we were just talking about.
Of the planks. Yeah, maybe I can share in a little bit. I can pull something of just
no problem.
How that footage looks.
Actually, you know what? While I was on this other spot here, let's take a look at. You did share some construction photos.
Oh no!
Which it looks like. I mean, again, people hear a lot like, "Oh, we've got a construction partner or a contractor partner," and sometimes it sounds like, "Oh, we just drew some stuff and they went and built it." But I think in your case, and probably many cases, that's not the case. There's a lot more sweat equity, I guess, from the design team itself, right?
And I feel it is also desired, at least on our team, that we get a moment of hands-on action with this. And, on last year, the previous year from this, we left the threading of the installation for us, for the team.
Yeah.
And in this case was the painting. So it is like, like breaking a champagne bottle on the ship. For us. Yeah.
And it works out because there's always something that the GC doesn't really want to do,
Yeah.
And we're more than happy to come in and get everybody involved. It really builds the excitement too.
Yeah, I think in last year's exhibit, we had around 3,000 eyeballs attached to do this type of stringing. And I remember when we told the GC about it, their eyes just like, absolutely no.
Yeah. We've committed 5 hours to this.
But a piece of fabric, they told us. So that's how we ended up spending 3 weekends just knitting this thing.
that's definitely where, I mean, we've talked about this in some of the other ones. I'm sure it comes up again where there's lots of architects involved with this event, but that's also part of the direct appeal from an architecture side is like, okay, like you're literally building the thing you drew out, or like there's a lot more understanding that happens from that. And I guarantee whoever on the team was there putting in all those eye bolts probably thought about that next time they drew something on a work project, that had a reiteration of a lot of stuff for
Oh yeah.
So another thing I remember, when we did the screen printing, you came with like a bunch of plain white T-shirts, and then when we saw you at the festival, you were like fully colored, yes, and they're
Oh yeah, let's see
matching
if
your
we got.
installations.
Hang on, I have.
Well, you got to
Close-ups.
reinforce it with the branding.
That was definitely all Nomi.
I think most of our shots in here have no.
Yeah, we love those t-shirt designs, definitely. I have like 3.
Yes, that's great. Let's see. Any other? So let's see. Are there any? I mean, you've done this several times at this point. I mean, how many? You've definitely done the last time before in South Lake Union. Were you there the first year, 2019?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
we did.
remember.
We did. It was 4 planks with different little games of balances actually in your intro video as well. That's the first time that we experimented a little with more color.
Yes, that one was really good. Yeah, the color that and then 2021 is the big color one, which was the only colorful one. They ended up on all the photos and everything.
On that newspaper.
Very, very smart to I'm pulling them up here now. Let me see. It's 2021, 2019. Were any of you part of the ones on when we were down on Westlake?
I wasn't.
I was part of the last one we did, and that was our first attempt
2018.
at an interactive installation, and we failed miserably. But
really? Wait, was that the one? Wait, were you the ones that had the wing, like movable?
No, it was more like a flower shape made of mylar.
But it was digitally controlled, right?
It was supposed to have LED lights. But
yes. So this is what I was referring to as like,
okay.
Yeah, there's always somebody who's sitting there because I remember it must have been you.
Yeah, we were in this little corner
stressing out, trying to
like
make it work while the event. But yeah, I know that. I hate we've had that happen to like my own team, and it's not fun.
But every year, you kind of learn from your past installation, and you build and every year you kind of get better at doing these. It sounds like over the years you've learned quite a few things, like making it modular, learning how to assemble it quickly. I was going to ask you how build day went, because that can be kind of chaotic for a lot of teams. It sounds like it went fairly seamlessly for you guys.
Well, the 2019 is an example of one we did without a GC. So there was a lot more turmoil building it on our woodshop in the office. But that's definitely, we learned a lot from it. And we've used the GC in the next ones. And well, that one that was digital was very easy to assemble. So yeah, it is a lesson learned. I think you can see a piece of the evolution on everyone, I think.
Yeah, we refer to that one as one of the kind of examples of perfect project where it was like, okay, it's bright and colorful, interactive, it kind of works from most heights, and like in fact it went to Bumbershoot that year with some other ones. And it was flexible, so you could kind of reconfigure the design on the fly. Oops, sorry, I didn't realize I was on the wrong tab there. That was a great one. And then of course we have this one from 2021, which to your point about eye bolts and running thread.
But it was the thing that kept people, like going through it with a camera.
What inspires your colors and what inspires the colors in your designs?
We've
I think no, go ahead, Eduardo.
we've done a different approach. I know it looks similar to a point. For Games of Balance, it was more like a child garden where it's prime colors, and then this one was like a like the tunnel emerged. It was like a journey of transformation. So we chose that as the bright transformation palette. um, and in this one, we were trying to go for a Seattle sunset. So those were our kind of palettes where we were
Hmm.
working on, and it's part of the like our team process to have someone come up with this through the process.
Yeah, one of the things we do, or that we started doing, especially with a big team, is to give everyone a little bit of ownership. So interactivity, design,
Hmm.
visual design, structure, and that way they can take ownership of that, solve different things, and consult with the group. So it was KJ and I believe Astrid that came up, and Aparna, sorry, that came up with this scheme for this year. But the overall theme, as Eduardo mentioned, for the three installations is just
Hmm.
to make it colorful, to make it pop, to make it vibrant and fun for the festival. Because I
Hmm.
know that you guys play a lot with colors and with different shapes, and we try to stay away. It's very very hard to resist not to do the architectural piece that is embedded in nature and all of these things, but we want to make people want to come and enjoy the festival and see us a very different perspective and experience of their day to day. So that's how we ended up with this very challenging colors, I must say. But it's very interesting also, just going back to the interactivity. This
Hmm.
installation that we have in front of us is not so interactive as the one we did before and the one we did
Hmm.
last year. And one of the things we noticed is that for adults, it was really fun to go through it and try to take photos. But we noticed that kids were using it in many different ways that adults were not. They were going through them, were trying to hang from the strings. So that's why this year we focused entirely on what something that small kids could use, and they would be enjoying the experience fully from their perspective.
Yeah, I think for me, the color story is, kind of building off Rodrigo, relating it to the interaction. The color story, the interaction, the design, tectonically, all of these things holistically go into what design is. And, we try to celebrate as much, as many aspects of design as possible. And when we can create experiences that kids can enjoy, you know, uh, I think that helps design generally, and really makes, inspires hopefully future generations of people to be interested in design.
Yeah, definitely. Like an approach to the non-architect. I feel that's a good way to target that color and
Hmm. For sure.
And go ahead.
No, go. You keep going.
No, I was going to speak more about the challenges, or one of the biggest challenges, I think, is the second life aspect. And that's where color comes into play, and how are you using paint or not, or maybe in this case we did use recycled material.
Hmm.
I think secondhand wood, but the main aspect that we challenge every year is we have somebody especially dedicated at finding who is able to take this after the event, and that process is a little difficult, both from the legal side to the who
Hmm.
is willing to take these things. We still want them to be big enough to be at the festival, but also to be able to fit in somebody's space. Last year we were able, no, the 2021 we were able to have it at Optimism for 2 to 3 months before it
Oh
became a
wow.
little more on the winter side. So their winter garden had to be occupied, so we had to dismantle it. This year we were not able to find, probably because of the size, but also as Nomi mentioned before, Callison was a little concerned that if we're going to give it to somebody, they need to take full responsibility of it because we're not going to be tendering to it. So I think maybe doing something that it can be dismantled, not for the same purpose, but it can be used. So it's a whole challenge that we're still trying to nail down how to make it work properly.
Yeah. We often get that, like, well, why don't all these get donated to X or Y? It's like, well, there's a lot more complication here. But also it's clearly it's part of the design challenge to think about where it goes, regardless of what you're going to do with it. Because, you know, even if you're just dumping it, which we don't really want anybody to necessarily do, but, like, you know, how do you do that after the end? Everybody thinks about how to get it there and get it built, and then that's kind of where the story stops for, I think, for the newest the first year teams is always that you can see a lot of that where people get a little kind of what's the word panicked on Sunday when they're about to tear down and realize, oh, this is very large, and, like, you know, where does such a large thing go? Yes.
Yeah, we're still working on you know, how to extend that life, but I felt, you know, personally a lot better about, you know, this year's project was, you know, at least 75% recycled materials from our GC partner, and that really helps a lot, you know. So if you can, you know, access found material or recycled material and upcycle, you know, then material that's getting, you know, disposed of has a little bit longer life. You know, once we figure out the secret, we'll come back on and tell y'all what we came up with.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, it's an internal thing, and it's always a competition between the idea people want to do and also wanting to be responsible, you know, and so that's where we've less stipulated it in our call and more made it, you know, just something that we expect everybody to think of, but less we're going to require you to do X or Y, because it's different in every case. Like yours, you know, you're starting at the beginning with using reusable supplies. Some other folks, I think whoever was it last week or the week before, where they talked about they had a plan, you know, 3 years down the road, but that meant finding somebody and, like, doing, you know, that's not always the case with, again, like you said, certain things just, they're meant to be for 48 hours. They're not, you know, they're not built to be safe in the long run.
Yeah, no, without any, you know, like, care for it, like, it couldn't happen. We saw, like, when on the 2019 when it went to the Bumbershoot Festival, like, yeah, it was a different kind of attention, you know. So, like,
it got fenced off pretty quick.
Yeah. Maybe some yellow tape. So even then, and I feel like it was probably the more do-it-yourself kind of construction, but at the same time, it was one of the safest.
Yeah.
But even in the festival, we knew children were climbing it, and, you know, like, that was the first experience that put the mark on, okay, let's consider safety a lot, because kids are wild.
That's a good one. We at one point, the coordinators of the festival did some guest crits at UW where they were going to build some installations. And of course, the first thing we did, the three of us there, would just run full tilt at the thing, their kind of example one, and everybody kind of freaked out. And it's like, that's the first thing that's going to happen. They're not going to walk up and kind of, like you were talking about, this idea of, like, oh, well, they'll do step 1 or 2 or 3. It's like, that's not necessarily, however you see kind of the precious interaction, unless you do a whole bunch of work to get it exactly into that rigid way, they're going to use it in some way you haven't anticipated. You know, they're going to immediately walk up to these the ribs here and kind of try and rack them and all that stuff. And if you're there, that's one thing, but then when you're not there, as far as we're talking about afterlife and things, that's always the trick. So
in this case, GC really helped us envision that they were concerned about the stability of the ribs, so they created a kind of like a wire system that you probably
I was looking at that here. That's this kind of tracking along.
Right, so at least each rib has the support of the ones next to each other, so it would be more of a a leaning down of the whole thing. We did have a few kids just deciding to stay there inside of the ribs while their mom was trying to call them out and they wouldn't. But other than that, it was pretty funny.
You're sitting there sweating a little. Well, did you? So were they? Oh, so each piece is just screwed.
They ended up being
other?
pocket screwed. Yeah,
Okay.
we used a jig and a pocket screw. I think in one of our mock-ups we were testing that versus like a thicker
plate.
structural screw, and
yeah.
I mean that ended up coming down to cost. I think the structural screws were almost $1 a screw, and with the size of our installation, that was problematic. So the smaller wood screws that were able to be pocket joined, saved on a lot of cost.
And I don't know if you remember when we assemble it, but it is basically modules of some fins, and then we put in, like just clip it below the base, and then assemble it all together, and then as a group of modules, they get stable within each other.
Yeah, they hold, and yeah, I feel like it went. It's always a blur, but I feel like your piece went together pretty quickly last year. Definitely in 2019. I remember it being done before we were really other folks were even setting up. So
and that's part of the design process as far as, how do we get it on the allotted time? How do we get it up as fast and as easy as possible? And with this year's installation, we had to also do, wiring, speakers, finding power. I think finding power was the longest thing that we did.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up. We haven't talked about that in any other ones.
I think we had to run back to the office and get a longer extension cord.
I think we went to ACE for that.
ACE, yeah, we went to ACE. So
for anybody listening, power is technically available, but
test it. Go to the park. 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 days before.
Yeah, we test ourselves, and then by the time the festival happens, it's dead all over. But yeah, bringing a lot extra and having a backup plan. Like, in my head for things, I know exactly where I can go get a generator on about a moment's notice, things like that as well.
And watch out for the black widows on the
yes, in those power vaults. The amount of spiders in there, or spider nests that had caught fire because they got into the
oh yeah.
There's a lot. We made Tyler pull all those out for us when we were testing.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to share with folks thinking about the festival? Any advice or anything like that?
I'm curious if there's like anything that we could do to improve the festival from your perspective, either in support for the teams or just the festival in general. If you've got any, I don't know, advice or tips.
Well, from the experience level of being at the festival, I think bring food back. That was really good a couple of years ago. From the organization, it would be interesting to explore other avenues where we bring other folks that maybe are not from design or architecture or interior design or this industry, especially here. And if we try to maybe encourage a few more firms to do a little bit on encourage on the tech side, maybe we could bring some of the big guys we have around in some shape or form. I don't know, any just ideas of how we can bring other people, other industry or other communities to really elevate this. But I know you're running out of space as well, so it's super challenging for you.
This is the third biggest park in the city. So we figured we have about 6-7 years at our old growth rate, which has changed. 2020 shifted everything, and it's probably shifted another decade out before we need to move from this space. But what we do need help with is actually reaching out to, like you said, to all those folks. Everybody from the festival could use help with that in terms of, who to call, who to talk to, how to, there's a lot of outreach that is done, but not all of it is super valuable ones because it's cold call-ish type of things. Or what we find is it's on the board level and it's direct to we're talking about sponsorship versus kind of how do we engage. But yeah, we agree. And we'd like other design industries to be involved. Like the block party itself has charted a little bit into a lot of architects, and we're seeing landscape architects coming back. But we used to have other design industries much more involved in this event, and so finding ways to get them back involved, so it isn't just the architecture pavilion show. That's a constant battle.
One of my references before I moved to Seattle was the Mexico City Design Festival, where installations have this broader land where maybe they can happen at a very famous public museum or Beaux-Arts Palace or at different places. And there's, of course, the centralized location where, as Rodrigo said, there's other than just architectural exhibitions. There's industrial design, showcasing their products and things like that makes it more into like a fair and it is a different environment, definitely. But I feel the community of Seattle would definitely benefit from having that as near.
Yeah, that was definitely the original goal. We had that in the early days, and I think what's happened is some of those design industries have found other avenues at the same time that work better for them, and so they've gone off that route. And because this industry, or this, the Seattle Design Festival is led by the AIA, effectively, the Architecture Association. Well, then it becomes very kind of circular. Two architects are the ones that came up with the idea for the block party, so of course we got all our architecture friends, and it kind of is cycled. And it's this obvious value proposition for an architect or a contractor to build something that it's very kind of one-to-one. A firm can see how they get something out of that, where if you're a certain some other type of design industry, that's a little harder to see. Well, if we build the thing, is that a one-to-one sort of value for us? Even though, again, as us as the designers involved, the value we're getting is not about clients, but there's certainly a commercial aspect to that people are thinking about.
It's a motivation
to fight. Yeah,
it's a bit of a challenge for us, but I think there is a desire to be multidisciplinary with these installations, or just the festival.
So tell your friends.
Spread the word.
Let's see some glass.
And we're always trying ideas. I mean, early days, I don't know how far back you all go, but like 2013, 2014, we actually used to make the teams themselves, and they weren't firms, and that was a boon to being at multidisciplinary, but it was a lot of effort, and it put a lot of kind of weight onto, we had to find contractors who were willing to partner with all these ad hoc teams, and that that just became a little unwieldy for them, of course. So it's we experiment every year that we go with that. But yeah. And as far as going around the city, we have done that. 2019 we did that. Maybe we'll do a show on that at some point, because this is sort of living history of the festival as well, about how that was largely a failure. I'm not going to dump on any of the specific folks, but we'll say that things didn't work out for some specific reasons who we chose to be partners with. And so now we kind of have to wait and rebuild a relationship with the city in order to try that again. But yeah, that would be like cool. And that, speaking of afterlife, that is one thing I think we keep trying to bring back here with these installations, is finding partners with the city. So when you folks bring these things to the block party, there's perhaps the potential for it to find a partner there, when you don't have one necessarily in mind, like we did back when we were.
Amazing.
Yeah. When we were in Westlake, we used to just, our partner was the Downtown Seattle Association, and they could just go around and say, oh, these 3 installations, they could just stay here. We can't do that. Lake Union Park is so popular, we can't really do that, leaving anything there, but we're trying to find a similar type of.
We were speaking with Seth from the DSA for this installation, and it came back to the legality of things at the end, but But
We have tried.
definitely it would be great if there was already a framework or a platform that teams could take
Yes.
advantage of to develop that.
Even
from
if it was bringing closer the permit, because there is a permit associated with putting whatever
Yeah.
that association. So, even a link to that would motivate people
Yes.
to click it.
Yeah, exactly. If we could get parking day to start again in Seattle, there's also that as well. And, like there's a lot of things. Anything else you all want to share with us,
Big
with
thanks. I mean,
newbies?
I feel every festival I've walked away with a positive feeling, and it is a great thing for the community that happens. And yeah, I mean, kudos, and let's keep doing it, making it bigger.
Yeah, are we gonna see you? We're gonna see you again this year.
Definitely.
If we had asked you that the day after the festival, would it be a yes?
It's always like a roller coaster of,
Yeah.
am I going to do it again?
I don't. Yeah, we never send that follow up poll until much later on after people have had some time to decompress. Alrighty, well, thank you everybody from CallisonRTKL.
Thank you.
I think
Thank you.
is that is the official name of the firm now. It's not C.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
CallisonRTKL.
Thank you everybody, and join us next time.
Have a nice
We're gonna
one.
go out on a little video here.